Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
And I'm Eric.
and this week we are diving deep into the Segaverse as we look at Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the third film in this Sonic franchise that kicked off way back in 2020 during the pandemic. We have all of the voice actors are back. Ben Schwartz back as Sonic the Hedgehog. Idris Elba back as Knuckles. Just proud of him getting that paycheck. Colleen O'Shaughnessy back as Tails. We have James Marsden and Tika Sumpter back. And of course, Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik. But they weren't content to just have Jim Carrey once. We get Jim Carrey.
About the villains.
Get Jim Carrey twice. This one introduces a new superpowered hedgehog, Shadow, voiced by Keanu Reeves, which is kind of fun if you remember in Sonic 2 how enthralled Sonic is with the movie Speed and all of Keanu Reeves' action movies. That I thought that was kind of funny. What I'm very excited about is I have seen all of the films. In fact, I rewatched a couple of the Sonic films on Thursday before I saw this. Eric never saw Sonic or Sonic 2, went into Sonic 3 cold. Eric, was it difficult to follow?
I know exactly what happened in both of the other movies without any effort of strain of thought. On the one hand, it makes it to where, this is a very standalone product. It's very clear what happened. But also makes me feel like I didn't miss much.
Did you play the games?
I did a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Knuckles was always my favorite, and I think that translated into this movie. And I was fascinated by Shadow, but I never actually got to play the game that Shadow was introduced in.
So I didn't even get far enough into the games to get to Knuckles. I vaguely remember that they introduced Tails in one of the games, but I remember going chasing the rings. It used to be kind of a fun time, but I used my Sega more to play Joe Montana Football 1993. Probably dovetailing with a little more of my interests. As I mentioned, this one, it has a plot. It's not really worth going into. This feels like a weekend where we're getting a launch of family-friendly entertainment. You always get that somewhat around the holidays. We have this movie. We have Mufasa also open, both part of big IP that are going to be popular with the kids. I know I went on Thursday to one of the early screenings, which ended up being more of a highlight of my day than the Broncos game. I went to an early screening so I wouldn't miss any of that Thursday night football. I made a bad choice. But there were a lot of kids, a lot of families, a lot of people cheering at different points in time. They've already announced there's going to be a Sonic 4. They definitely lead you into that at the end of this one, just like the end of Sonic 2 really teased Shadow by opening that up and showcasing it. I'll be curious to see if the cast changes a little bit going forward. There's definitely something that happens at the end here that would portend at least one of the mainstays of the franchise potentially not returning. There's a lot going on here. Jim Carrey, probably the biggest name. He seems like he's having fun with this. To me, there are like a couple of different kind of Jim Carrey performances, and some of them I dearly love. I really enjoy when he's in a more restrained dramatic role, and I really am not wild about when he just goes off the rails and is his most slapstick, and that is entirely what this franchise is, and I feel like that can be a lot. And here we got that doubled up, which was twice the allotness. I kind of like Ben Schwartz. I like the dynamic with him and Idris Elba, who makes me laugh. A very good and serious actor who was freaking terrifying villain in The Wire, one of the greatest shows of all time, and is now lending his voice to. He's not a hedgehog. I'm not sure what Knuckles is other than the MVP of these movies for me. But I like Thumbs neutral. I think these are fine family films. I think they're okay for what they do. I have never been really drawn to the films. I didn't much care for the first Sonic film. I was trying to figure out why they made it. The second one, I just gave in to what they're doing, and I feel the same here.
Okay.
Um,
You're just letting them happen to you.
well, I mean, I think they're fine for what they are, and they are good for um, a certain type of audience, the audience that they are really aiming for. And I think that works, and there should be a place in theaters for that. Younger audiences, fans of the video games, are going to be highly entertained. It is like a couple hours where you don't have to think too deeply about anything, and given some of the films we have out now, that's uh, that's probably not the worst.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel?
Uh I like a point you made that there is a place in the movies for this because uh it felt like a kind of classic, like big, like I'm a kid, I'm going to go to the movies and I'm going to see something big and emotional and spectacular, like in the terms of spectacle. And uh it is a movie that you have seen 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 times before. It's I'm not gonna spoil anything because we have a viewer who is going to see it today at 11. I think you will have an enjoyable time in a movie theater. Um, I think Keanu Reeves is great doing his thing as Shadow. I love Idris Elba as Knuckles, kind of making like a favorite character into a favorite character. I was the hokiest thing to me that I had a hard time getting around was some of the dynamic of the live action uh couple, James Marsden and
Tika Sumpter.
Tika Sumter. And but they're not present enough for it to be a consistent bother. I obviously did not understand when the guy pulls a motorcycle helmet off and he's someone from another movie. I'm like, okay, cool. But I was able to piece together basically what was going on. I didn't get it when they started putting on masked faces of other characters that were in past movies or other characters in past movies showed up. But it's like, oh no, I know exactly who this person is. I guarantee you, I know exactly what their role was. Of course, Knuckles was the bad guy that turned good in 2.
Mhm.
So, like it's interesting. And I could call out a movie that has borderline the exact same origin they give to Shadow. And, I could nitpick this and that, but if I talk about what this movie is on its own and whether or not it was successful at being what it was trying to be, yeah, I think to me when they start doing the thing where late in the movie you get flashbacks to earlier in the movie because they're worried you don't have an attention span long enough to remember things, that kind of thing kind of bothers me. But I really like Ben Schwartz's Sonics. All the voice cast is great, and I love some of the recurring gags, like the puppet Tiny Tom. And I think that's really all. I'm not super passionate about it. I'm not super down on it. I guess it would be a thumbs neutral for me. I kind of want to go one thumb up just because I know that people who just want to go be entertained are going to be entertained. So it does what it does.
I do hope though with the fourth one that they do something a little bit different because I honestly did feel a little bit like this uh this third one, the I know that they doubled out Jim Carrey's character or whatever, but it felt a little bit like recycling the plot from Sonic 2, especially with the arc for Shadow and for everything was a very similar arc.
Knuckles.
But it looks like they went a little bit of a different way at the end. Maybe Keanu Reeves was like, "Hey, I like doing one, but
Yeah, I forgot Jim Carrey. I adore Jim Carrey as a human being and everything that he's trying to be, even when people are talking about him being like very weird and eccentric. The way that he sort of bucks fame and calls back at this idea of what his success has been, where he tries to live as someone who respects and appreciates the fame and respect that he has, but also thinks of that as a very toxic part of human culture. He is fascinating to me, and I love watching him when he's like, well, I'm a part of this system, I'm a part of a team, and I'm here to entertain people, and if I can bring some joy into people's life, then that's what I'm going to do. And this is that angle of that movie to him. This isn't necessarily the I'm passionate about this message as a piece of art kind of vein that he's been in things like Eternal Sunshine, Truman Show, Man in the Moon, which is one of my favorite movies of all time and still doesn't have like a Blu-ray release. Um,
The Majestic."
The Majestic is great. Frank Darabont. We could do a whole special like thing like we did with Mike Flanagan for Frank Darabont. Um, but Jim Carrey here, I think, yeah, they dressed him up and he did his thing, and they very much leaned into him as a gimmick more than a character.
But that honestly has been the case in all of the Sonic movies.
Okay. Well, I mean,
That's kind of like
he's good at
where
it.
we're going. Yeah, and there are a lot of people that like that. Sometimes I've seen him do ones of that. Like I enjoyed Ace Ventura: Pet Detective back in the day. There are moments of The Mask that that kind of work, but sometimes that iteration of that style can be a bit much.
You don't want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
No. No. But I think people are going to have fun with this. So it's probably going to do pretty well. I'm curious. The director Jeff Fowler, he's pretty much in it. He did one animated short, and then he's done the 3 Sonic movies, and he worked on the TV series Knuckles. That's on Paramount. It looks like he's in process of rebooting and making a new version of the Pink Panther. I'm kind of curious to see
Ooh.
where that goes, because that has always been kind of a fun project. But he seems to have a good feel for these and the integration. I think the funniest moment for me, just because I wanted to go to the earliest screening so I could be home for Thursday Night Football, so I went to the fan event screening. Ben Schwartz is just out there, and it says Ben Schwartz Sonic. He's out there as himself talking about the movie. I don't know what that did to some of the kids that went to the fan. They're like, "You're not Sonic." It reminded me of about, "You're not Sonic. You smell like beef and cheese."
Yeah.
Kind of breaking the third wall. So I couldn't help but chuckle through some of that. But if you've been a fan of the other movies, I think this is going to work for you. If you have young people in your life that are fans, I think this is going to work for you. This is really a weekend where the 2 mainstream releases are aimed squarely at that demographic, because let me tell you, nothing that's coming out on Christmas Day is aimed at that demographic. We'll talk about some of those next week.
Interesting family choices to make.
And even though War of the Rohirrim is a animated film, I don't really think it was aimed at that demographic either. So this month has had a lot of stuff that was probably not great for families. I mean, if you hate your family and just hate everyone you're with, you take them to Craven.
Yeah. If you have older kids, there's plenty of options, but it really for like younger, I'll just say younger kids. Yeah.
Speaking of films that are decidedly not aimed at that,
I am not the actor of Tales.
no, that the actor for Tales is actually a lady, Colleen O'Shaughnessy.
No, but our commenter asked me.
Oh, well, I mean, you give off that Tales vibe. You're just swinging in there, saving the world with all of your gadgets. For those that are looking for a little something else, I will touch on a couple of the other releases this week. Neither of us have seen Mufasa because both of us are going to see him with family later, so may end up chatting about it next week. I know we're going with an extended family group on Christmas Eve, so it's a lot. I just wait. I'm not sure that's a movie I need to see twice in a theater, so it's just a feeling I have in my heart. But I did see the other big movie that's releasing this week, and that is The Brutalist. It is not coming everywhere. It is in limited release, but it is doing its big Oscar run. It has been nominated almost everywhere. It is quite a commitment. It is 215 minutes, which, if you work the math out there, is 3 hours and 35 minutes. It has an intermission in it. It is also whatever the opposite of Sonic is in terms of tone would be The Brutalist. You focus on Adrian Brody, who plays Laszlo Toth, was a talented and decorated architect in Europe pre-World War II, who, as a man of the Jewish faith, was persecuted during World War II. What we pick up in 1947 as he is on a ship bound for New York, having survived the Holocaust, believing himself to be alone as he got separated from his family when he was interred. When he gets there, he reunites with his American cousin, played by Alessandro Nivola, who gives him a job, a place to stay, and the news that his wife and his niece actually did survive the Holocaust and are in Europe, also trying to make it to America. He ends up working a few jobs over several years, trying to fight to bring them to America when he connects with a very wealthy businessman played by Guy Pearce, who helps to bring his wife to America, his wife played by Felicity Jones. And then he employs Laszlo to build this big project that is supposed to be a part of his legacy, but things kind of go off the rails. It's a really dense plot. I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing it. Incredible craft here. Brady Corbett and Mona Fastvold wrote the script. Brady Corbett directed it. Some incredible craft, some beautiful shot sequences, a very sweeping epic, both in terms of length and in terms of trying to look at the pursuit of the American dream and the plight of those who survived the horrors of World War II and are trying to find and rebuild their lives. There are a lot of interesting topics here. Some good performances. I thought Adrian Brody was very good, as is Jones, Guy Pearce. All three of them have been nominated in various places. I think all three are potential candidates for the Oscars. But Brutalist is a good title to describe the plot and the experience. This is very long. It is very dark at times and did not totally work for me. I was taken with the craft, but not the narrative here, which takes some exceptionally dark turns at times. So this is definitely a commitment if you are thinking about wading into a movie, both because it will probably be, given the fact that theaters now show you 95 trailers and 20 minutes of commercials, you should expect to spend the better part of a day.
Why bother creating the AMC? It begins with an idea, the whole thing about how movies are made, and say we make movies better, if you're still going to show the Nicole Kidman thing that says the exact same lines. Why? Who are you advertising to? We're already in the theater. Oh my gosh.
The Cinemark pre-show is now literally up, and I'm a proud Cinemark Movie Club member. I've been a platinum member for a couple of years because I go obviously quite a bit. I have been getting increasingly frustrated. We went from like 15 minutes, which I felt was pretty long, to in some of the recent ones, it's been 28 minutes of pre-show.
Yeah.
To the point where sometimes when you're seeing a lesser movie, or if you see a million movies like I do, you start to forget what you saw until the credits open. And I'm like, what am I? Oh, yes, this is what I am watching. And it's not just because of trailers. There's like all the commercials that I no longer have to watch on TV. I feel like I make up for when I go to a movie theater, but it is getting increasingly longer. If you want to skip the ads and skip a 3.5 hour length, another movie that opened this week, the last of the big Netflix streaming releases for 2024, is The 6888, which is another World War II film. This tells the unit of the 6888th, which was an all-female, all-African-American unit in World War II that got assigned the Herculean task of sorting out the mail in Europe during the height of the World War II conflict. They got tasked with delivering more than 17 million pieces of mail in a 6-month time frame, managed to accomplish that task, get the mail flowing, and boost morale for soldiers at the front and families at home who, we think about now like, oh, I can track your location on my phone. Well, no, it was pen and paper back then, and it took months, if not years, to get correspondence. This one comes from Tyler Perry. Probably not the typical movie you'd think of when directed by Tyler Perry, but I thought he did a very nice job here. This was an interesting film, probably a story not a lot of us had heard about. Kerry Washington leads the cast. I thought she did a nice job as kind of the commanding officer of this unit. Something a little interesting, a little bit different. This one just about 2 hours, streaming on Netflix. So if you're interested in history, another World War II tale, that is one that you can check out this weekend. But that'll pretty much do it for us this week. Any other films you want to shout out?
Maybe Blood Red Sky, but I've only watched the first 15 minutes.
Is that a horror movie, I'm assuming?
It is I'm not sure what nationality. It's a European, a European movie about a flight where, from what I can tell, the mother of a child is a vampire trying to sedate herself to get home so that she can get a bone marrow blood transplant to hopefully cure her of her condition. And, she gets loose on the flight. And so it's like vampires on a plane. And that sounds fascinating to me.
Well, I mean, it's definitely different. If you want to follow me on Letterboxd, I'm Nighthawk7734 there. That'll be easier for you to keep up with everything I'm watching. It is screener season, and I am trying to pound through everything. So I definitely post scores. I'm sure I've seen other things I like this week, whether they're out in wide release or not yet, because I know we have like... there's like 6 or 7 movies that are opening in the next week, including 5 that open on Christmas Day. We will be talking about those when we are with you next week. The main focus of next week's show will be the much anticipated Nosferatu from Robert Eggers. I'm excited for Eric to see that so that we can talk about it. I've seen all 5 of the main releases for Christmas Day. You can look for written reviews are going to start popping up this week, but I will touch on all of them when we get together next week. But I'm very excited for you to see Nosferatu. I know you've been excited since it feels like I saw it forever ago, just because it's screener season.
It's only been like a few weeks, but yeah.
Screener season is crazy. I had looked. I still have like 38 that I'm supposed to get through. First world problems. But hopefully you guys have a fun holiday season. Get to see family. Take them to a movie. There are going to be a lot of different options depending on how you feel about the people you're with, what you want to subject them to or take them to. So we will look at some of the options next week. Until then, we will see you guys at the movies.